Madison.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we will call this
Live.
Good. Okay. We will call this meeting of the City of Salem Bond Implementation Oversight Committee to order. President Ahoy.
Stapleton.
Aaron. And staff to be identified as needed. Do we have any? We don't have any members of the public. Anybody online? Oh, here's member Courtwright joining us online. As soon as we'll just pause for a second while he's connecting to audio. Bob, can you hear us?
I can, thank you.
Great. And do you have a copy of the packet?
I do.
Great. All right. We were just taking roll. So
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Member Courtwright is here with us. We have no public comment, no action items. So we're on to management update information items. Transportation. Alan, is that you or who's leading this off? Brian?
I'm going to go ahead and kick off the McGilchrist Street project. And
Okay.
We've got staff here that are going to walk through the presentation. They've been sharing with different groups here recently. So a lot of questions have come up on McGilchrist Street, primarily related to cost.
Yeah.
You know, why does this cost so much? You know, the $50 million price tag is obviously a big number for anyone to look at. There's a lot going on. And there's a lot of unique things with this project. One of the handouts shows the percentage of funding that goes with the project. 43% of it is federal funding. And the federal funding that we have gotten as we go through grant applications shows the design that we have in place. So it shows a realignment of 22nd Street. It shows a center turn lane. Those are things that are needed to improve safety, promote development, and we're all considerations in the federal grant. So if we were to try and change what that design looks like, we would jeopardize losing our federal grant funding that we have in place for the project. So I think that's one thing that's important to keep in mind for everybody. And so I kind of wanted to kick off with that.
Could I hit pause for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Just so our two counselors who were just arriving, Councilor Marnie, and then we have also Councilor Nishioka, because I just want them to hear. I think what you just said, there's some really important things that I really want to make sure that they have the opportunity to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're talking about McGilchrist and about the end of, if you have a packet, so we're just going over this, and Brian was just talking about the funding and how 43% of the funding is through a federal grant. So if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. So McGilchrist Street actually in our transportation plan is a major arterial, which it should have a 5-lane section. As design began years ago, it was determined that with the traffic counts, we could get by with the minor arterial standard, which is the 3-lane section. By providing that 3-lane section and realigning 22nd Street, there's crash reductions that the crash reduction rate will improve, which means there'll be less crashes. Because I want to make sure I say that correctly. Likewise, by having the center turn lane, with all the businesses and the development and the driveways that are out there, if you had only a 2-lane section, you end up with more rear end crashes. And with all the large truck volumes, it makes it a unique street because trucks take up a lot of space when they have to turn into driveways. I think the truck traffic out here is about 15%. We'll have the exact numbers. So it's a unique corridor. And I don't want to ruin his thunder. However, as we just before I turn it over to Will, as we went through federal grant applications, we had to include that criteria in the grant applications to get the funding because there's different things they look at, and crash reduction is one of them. So, you know, folks have proposed, well, can we do things to make it smaller, get rid of the center turn lane, maybe not do the intersection rely on 22nd Street. All of those things could jeopardize the federal funding that we have in place if we could go back and reopen that back up. So anyway, there's been a lot that's happened with the project, and I wanted to share that before I turn it over to Will. He's going to kind of walk through the presentation he gave for the neighborhood association.
It's amazing.
He was at SCATS doing a presentation there as well. He's got the planning commission coming up, and so there's a lot happening out here. So with that, Will, you want to go ahead and take over? Sure. Come and sit up here at the table and sure.
Thank you, Brian, for the introduction. To kind of put some perspective on that 43%, that's just over 22 million in federal funding, so pretty substantial. So last Tuesday, I had the opportunity to be at Cessna, and we went through this fact sheet that we have here. We also had a large billboard of the map.
There's a 10-foot version available. on the
Yes.
Oh, nice. So this is the small version?
That's the like a 1/3 version.
Wow.
Pocket size.
Yeah. So we went through and we hit a lot of the major items that we have on here. We start off by talking about some of the design elements that are in there. There's multiple culverts that we're replacing. There's a railroad crossing. We're replacing 3 of the existing signals that are out there, installing the new one at 22nd. And then we got into, what does it do for us? And one of the first things we hit here is the safety, like Brian was talking about, with the center turn lanes. We can help reduce crash rates. We also have the separated cycle track and pedestrian walk. So it's not like our normal standard, which is with the bicycle lane, with the traffic essentially only separated by striping, and the sidewalk is also separated.
Because you kind of referenced, I think, some of the building. So there's several pieces of property out here that are still yet to be developed. Isn't that true?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what the current counts that we're seeing probably are gonna change. Okay.
Yes, and the kind of moving into the next one on the economic opportunity, staff has identified about 36% of the total acres are underutilized parcels.
Mm.
And to your point about traffic volumes, the traffic consultant did take that into account, how they think that if all that was fully developed, how would that affect traffic?
Okay.
That was one of the things they looked at to confirm that the 3-lane section could handle it. We also talked a little bit about on that same bullet about how this sort of a unique site. It's very industrial. It's true, right at McGilchrist, but it also serves the airport is to the east. We have residents to all other directions basically. There's government services here as well.
Remind me where like the VA and Social Security is that? I can't remember.
It's in the Sandy building.
Yeah.
In here, this one, okay. I couldn't tell from this. Thank you.
So it's very unique. So we talked about how we're hoping to be able to serve lots of different folks here. At the meeting, one person was there that noted that they have a business there off of 19th. They noted that right now there's no transit opportunities really for their employees to come there. And so this will help. It's not to say Chariots or other ones will necessarily do anything, but it provides the opportunity for it. And in conversations with Chariots, they did point out they would like to do something. Right now, they don't necessarily have funding for it, but they would like to do more than what they're doing.
So they're not on there right now, but in future they would be?
They
Or hope to be?
they hope to be.
Are we thinking about where those stops would be and putting in the
Yes,
platforms?
yeah.
Okay.
So we're in contact with Chariots right now. One of the things they want to do is on 22nd, because they recognize that with this realignment, there's a nice link from Mission to
Right.
Madrona. And so they're looking at, kind of where this back a little bit from the intersection, like here and here.
Awesome, thank you.
So not a for sure thing, but
Right.
it provides the opportunity
Well,
for
I'd
it.
love the infrastructure to be built.
Right.
Or-
Because we really need transit service to be able, especially just for the VA and the social security and all of that. That's huge for me.
We also talked a little bit about the environmental part of this. So with the center turn lane, it will reduce the congestion costs from folks making left turns. So there'll be a less idling, less stop traffic. One of the things that struck me is, as I've been out there a lot, is there is a lot of that. Folks making left turns here at 22nd currently. Right now, without this realignment, if a truck is trying to make a left turn, it can really block everything because they'll get part way across and they just stop and sit there for the oncoming. Everyone sits. So that's a little bit on the like how it would help move traffic and make that part more efficient. It will help too by providing more pedestrian and bicycle opportunities, which should help as well. Even another option. There also will be water quality facilities along side of the road in different areas that will help clean the stormwater runoff. We will have detention facilities, which will help reduce stream bank erosion, especially at low flows.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
I see crossings here and here and like at the big intersections.
Mhm.
But were we planning on putting the pedestrian crosswalks at 16th and 19th and 23rd as well?
So one thing maybe before we get to that,
Mhm.
this project will be designed in phases. So
Okay.
this part is designed, like 100% design.
Mhm.
And there has been discussions about options, but we haven't gotten to final design on these areas.
Okay.
So that has been something that's been discussed. We're in the process of hiring, of advertising to hire a consultant for the final phases on the east and west ends. And I think that will give us opportunity to have some more of those discussions.
Because these are a few years out, right?
Yeah.
This
correct.
is the section we're really focusing on for now.
Yes.
And then these are down the road quite a
Yeah.
bit. I can't remember.
So this first phase will be, they may start this year, and then it will be completed in 2024. The east end will be in 2025, and then the west sort of half will be over two seasons, so 26 and 27.
The part of what we're constrained by there is the culvert has to happen during the water work periods and stuff.
Sure.
Could you be sure and speak up, Alan? You're clear at the end of the room for so people online.
Yeah, sorry, it's just wanted to add that part of the schedule issue for us is when we're doing culvert work, it's restrained to in-water work periods, which is typically about 3 months.
Okay.
And speaking of some of that culvert work, so then moving into the flooding piece of this. So this area has historically had some flooding issues. And one of the things this project is going to do is replace 2 culverts. There's one here, one closer to the railroad track. And technically they're actually bridges because of their size. So they'll be open bottom, fish passage friendly, and should help relieve some of the flooding that we've experienced out there. The overall package for the stormwater, when we looked at it, it was a surprisingly high number at 15 million. But when you look at all the stormwater quality facilities, the detention system, the culvert replacement, it's a complicated project. And so there's just a lot to it. And it's one of the things we wanted to highlight.
So on the pie chart, it says 11% city funds. Does that mean that some of that 15 million is coming from stormwater, coming from utility? Is that
Yes, there
Okay.
is some, yeah.
Yeah, stormwater is a big cost in all our projects now. You know, the requirements are much more strict, and you hear the developers will say the same thing. Storm is complicated, it costs a lot of money, and this is no exception. There's a lot going on out here with all the flooding and the different creeks that we have to cross and deal with. So that was one thing we wanted to separate out because we knew it was a big number, but we weren't able to share it until we put it all together. And it's more than just a street. This project is really going to take care of a lot of issues.
So I know it's a complicated project. Let me know if we're going too fast. At the actual neighborhood meeting, I believe we took more about 45 minutes probably. And there's a lot more information we went over, the details, but let me know if there's any more questions that you have.
I have a question.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So you said that the federal grant was 22 million right out of a $50 million budget. That still leaves 28 million. The question is, because I've also heard people say, well, 50 million for that stretch, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
I understand the requirements that have to be built into the project to get the federal grant. If we didn't have the federal grant, would there be a McGillcrest project? And if there was, without the federal grant, what would it look like?
Well, I think
If that question makes sense.
I think it does.
I think that there's a lot of stuff that be stripped out, obviously, because
This is the 7th, was it the 7th time we applied for the federal grant? Or
that
6th,
sounds
6th or
right,
7th
because I
time.
believe I heard we
So
failed
this has
6.
been like
Right.
a decade-long application process, but you guys can speak to the,
I mean, when we use federal monies, the costs go up. There's just a lot more requirements that go into a lot more deeper requirements. We look at all the construction requirements. There's a lot more paperwork. I don't know that the design would really change much, even if we didn't have the federal requirements, because when you look at the traffic, the growth that's gonna happen, all the trucks that are gonna be out there, I wouldn't see the design changing much from what we have now. So maybe that 50 million would be less because of some of the federal requirements, but it wouldn't be enough less than 28 million.
But the additional 22 million out of the bond funds basically pulled up of other projects applied to the project. What I'm trying to get at is, like, what's the response that I have when I have, people in the business community coming to me and saying, how on earth did we get the 50 million?
For 1 mile of.
Right, for 1 mile of,
That's what, that's. the
and
thing I
everyone's
hear.
been down there, right? And it's like, how on earth is that a $50 million project? And so I get it. It's.
One of my takeaways from what these guys were saying is that it's more than just a street upgrade.
Yeah.
That there's a lot going on with the stormwater and the flood issues and all of that. So that was a little bit, I don't want to say new information, but I heard it in a way I hadn't heard it before. That helps me kind of formulate a response. One of the things I've heard is, well, maybe why don't you just get rid of the middle turn lane, or why don't you have bike lanes, the bike, what do we call it?
Cycle track.
Cycle track. Why don't we just do that on one side? How much, and have you looked at those things?
Sure, yes, we have. So one thing on the center turn lane that came up again during the meeting, because of the large number of driveways, you'll notice, especially on the east half where it's more built out, there's a lot of driveways. They're pretty close together. And when trucks, as Brian mentioned, this is about 3 times higher than normal truck traffic in this area. As they pull out, they use that middle turn lane to help make their turning movements. We worked a lot with property owners during right away. They're very concerned. How can we still access our property, driveway width? And that was a big topic. And they use that center turn lanes. And because the driveways are so close, and knowing that they need that center turn lane, there isn't really an option to go out to the, have the center turn lane and then narrow back down and try to save, because you're just instantly going right back to a center turn lane.
Okay.
And which led to the question, there's less development here. So is there some opportunity there? And this is not developed, so we know driveways are going to come, and there still is quite a few on the other side. And so just looking at the frequency, the distance you need to transition from a center turn lane down to no center turn lane, it just didn't make sense, because it never really felt like we could get back down to like no center lane, and then we never could really do it. There just wasn't enough lane.
Okay.
And so then having just the whole stretch would really help.
And what about the cycle track on just one side?
So the cycle track on one side. So one thing now is it's only, it's 10 feet wide, 5 foot for pedestrians, 5 foot for bicyclists. That would, at a minimum, would have to be widened.
Yeah.
Because you'd have two-way traffic for the bicyclists,
Right.
and pedestrians. And you would also you'd have to think more about your crossing. So remembering that this area serves a lot of different needs. So if you live in an area down here and you're working in a business area here, you would probably prefer not to have to cross to use the cycle track on the other side. If you can just stay on your side, sure, that's a huge benefit, reduces conflicts with you.
And I would add on to the sidewalks. So there's some streets that develop where you don't have a lot of access or properties. We're talking about Cave Road. Oh, they back up to the street.
Yeah.
I mean, you could argue there's not a significant need for sidewalk on that side because
Right.
people are not coming going by that intersections. This is not that type of street. You have all these businesses, all these people need to access something, and so you can't. It'd be very difficult to not have a sidewalk on one side and tell people, well, you just got to cross the street to get to the sidewalk on the other side. So there are cases where sidewalk on one side of the street can be done and make sense. This is not one of them.
Well, I wonder if another way to think about this would be what the cost impact would be
Sure.
of making any of these changes. And these changes to me feel relatively cost neutral. So I wonder if we wanted to really maybe talk more about where the larger portion of the cost is in the project.
Yes, excellent point. So as we mentioned, the stormwater is 15 million, which is almost half of the expected construction costs. When we looked at how much the cycle track was, and we did a quick analysis of how much that would cost and how much that would change things. The change you're looking at would, by going to one side, because you would have to add and do different things, it would certainly probably be less than $1 million. And probably not nearly that because of the widths you would have to have. And the other part of it too is this. So this started in 2006. I can't remember who mentioned that it's been a pretty long process, but 2006, and then we worked toward 60% design to understand our right-of-way needs to set us up for the grants that we talked about earlier. And the right-of-way was based off of this design, after we've kind of finalized the design. On the back, we talked a little bit about the public outreach, which also helped influence design. One of the hard parts now, if you change that design and you move the cycle track over, we're already have purchased about 95% of the right of way. With the federal process, it's pretty lengthy. We have additional expenditures to acquire more right of way, and it would delay the project.
Yeah, I think the other thing is we're all kind of hanging on the 50 million. This is a projection for still work to be done 4 years from now, and there's inflation percentages factored in, there's contingencies. So we don't know exactly what it's going to cost us. Is our best estimate at this point in time, knowing that we've got to work into the future. This project at this intersection, the bids are going to open on that in about 2 weeks. We're going to see real numbers then, and that'll really help shape, what it looks like going forward. So I know the team is, worked hard, and we've had all this inflation the last couple of years and trying to inflate what they think it's going to be, and it could be less. I'm hopeful it'll be less than this, but it's an estimate at this point in time.
Okay, Bob, I see you came off mute. Did you have something?
Yes, I had a couple of questions. First,
Yeah.
I understood that we're still waiting for bids on this first phase. That's question one. And then second, I'm curious, we have double travel lanes at either end of the project, eastbound and westbound. And I'm curious if we've looked at the cost and necessity of those two additional travel lanes.
So speaking of the double traffic lanes, first on the west end, closer like in the 13th, 12th Street area, it's my understanding that is required in order to have adequate movements through those intersections. Those intersections are pretty close together. The distance between them is not real far, and so having the double lanes does help move things through there a little bit better. On the east end, closer to the airport, we definitely are looking at trying to reduce that as much as possible. For one thing, just impacts to the property owners. There's a really nice fence and different things on the one property. We just want to reduce the costs wherever we can, whether that's in the width of the cross section between the curbs, impacts the property owners, and we don't have a team yet. So as we mentioned earlier, we're hiring for the final design, but that is one of the things that we want to look at is, can we reduce this?
And Bob,
Yeah,
you may not have been able to see earlier because he was doing some pointing. So those two sections specifically that you just referenced are the ones that haven't been designed out yet. So it's all still in a very preliminary. So I think that there is still opportunity on those. So that was one of the takeaways, but I recognize that you probably can't tell that from when he was pointing because of the room configuration. So that's information we had and you didn't. So you're on mute still.
I'm sorry, let me go back to the first question, which is where are we at on bids on this first phase?
Sure.
as Brian mentioned, it's coming up soon. So June 6th, we were supposed to receive the bids.
So it's currently out to bid and
Out to bid,
we'll be
yeah.
receiving them on June 6th.
Yeah.
I mean, I will caution that many times when we're out to bid, contractors will ask questions and say, well, what about this? I don't see you have something for that. And
Sure.
we'll have to issue an addendum, which may extend the bid a week or
Sure.
two, but definitely 6th is the target date now. that could slip 1 to 2 weeks if contractors see issues.
The process is underway. That's
Process is
that's the
underway.
takeaway. Yeah, okay. And Bob, just, I don't know if you could also see that, but when they're talking about this phase one, but that's the 22nd Street intersection redesign that we're talking about for the bids. Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think so. We've already talked a little bit about the phases and when those will occur. So just as a reminder, this is coming up very soon. We'll be finished in 2024. The east end in 2025 and the west end over 2 seasons in 25 or 26 and 27.
Would there be an opportunity to do those other 2 pieces as one project and let that contractor figure? out
We
how-
don't think so. One of the other items that is going to cause quite a bit of work is coordination with the railroad. And so we've been cautioned, which is built into the schedule. We've been cautioned that that takes quite a bit of coordination with the railroad.
And so to not delay the other phase just
Yes,
because of the
yeah.
railroad on this end.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only other thing that I feel we haven't shared yet is at the bottom on the back of your fact sheet is a cross section of what we're doing. And we've heard a lot of questions about what it looks like. And so we talked a little bit with the public last Tuesday that there will be these, 10-foot separated concrete paths on each side. They will be striped. So there'll be a 5-foot bike with 5-foot pedestrian area, and that will be on both sides. And then we discussed on the cross section of the street itself, it is not a 13-foot lane. It's really 11-foot lane with a striped shy distance.
What's that mean? I was gonna ask, what does 2
Yeah.
feet shy mean?
So if it was only 11 feet from the curb to your other marking, driver behavior is that you'll shy away from the curb and then you'll encroach into the next lane, which in this case would be the center turn lane. And so this 2-foot buffer essentially from the curb means that you'll stay within your lane.
So does that mean that there's a line there at the 2-foot mark?
Yes.
what-
yeah.
okay.
Something to think about on that too, Mayor, is that there's a concrete curb and gutter right there. So there's gonna be a visual item right there that people are gonna see that's gonna kind of tend to shift them. Kind of like if you're walking next to a wall, you don't walk next to the wall, right? You guys kind of give yourself a little bit of room with something similar.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Well, I think the other question we heard a lot about, and you might have talked about on Tuesday, is speed, right?
Yes. Yeah. So lots of folks concerned about speed. We were asked about design elements, what speed we were designing to, what we think it'll be posted to. We are designing to the 45-mile-an-hour design speed because it's currently posted at 40, and normal practice is to design slightly higher than what the posted is for safety. One of the things that the design consultant warned us about is that's sort of the upfront thought to be similar to what we have today, but the actual speed study will occur after it's built, and then they'll go to see if there's opportunities to reduce speed.
What would change, like, let's say we change it to 35. What would change about this design?
Because one of the things we highlighted too is that this street section is pretty flat, it's straight. So normally when we think of designing to certain like speeds, we think about, your sight distance, stopping sight distance and different things. We don't have, vertical curves we're worried about where you go down and you're concerned about how far you can see. We don't have horizontal curves where we're, looking ahead to see if we have the field of vision that way. It's straight, more or less. So nothing would change, even if we designed to 30, really, it would change. We're already at sort of the smaller on the recommended lane width. So there would really be no changes to the cross section.
Could throw a roundabout out there and freak everybody out.
Oh, yeah.
We're trying to reduce. Is
Yeah.
it, is it, I was gonna say, is it posted to 40 because it's designated a major arterial? I worked on it for like 6 years. I'm shocked because it's posted to 40. I always assumed it was like a 30 or 35.
So one thing, and Rick, you may have to help me with this, but our design consultant spoke that because of Oregon law, we have to do things a certain way.
City
And
council's on
generally-
side when we start talking about speed limit.
Yeah, and normally would be you do your speed study, you look at the 85th percentile. Does sound like maybe there's some option to look at the 50th. And it also sounds like there's an option to go 5 miles an hour under what that shows. And so that's what the hope is, that we'll get there. But as they pointed out, the speed study will occur after it's constructed and
That doesn't make sense to me at all. It does not compute.
Which part?
Build it and.
Build it and then study it. Like, we're building it, we know what they're gonna do. We know because we're building it. Right?
Yeah.
Well, we're not innocent little like chicks like walking out into the road here.
Sure.
We know what's happening. And so then it's gonna be built and everybody's gonna speed and we're gonna be like, gosh darn it, I wish we could do something. But we're not gonna do anything about that.
So
I mean,
what
that's
we-
my feeling coming to the table. Maybe I'm snarky about it.
What I think what Will was pointing out is because of the geometry, we have maybe less tools than we would in a curvier stretch of road, but we are doing the things that we can't do, right? So one of those things is planting street trees, which makes it feel narrower and helps to calm traffic. The other is taking the bike lanes off and putting them outside of that street tree line, so that you don't have as wide of a feeling stretch of pavement that feels more like a drag strip.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is going to 11-foot lanes, right? That's as narrow as we really can do out here. So I think we're trying to do everything that we can to calm speed. And then the idea is we check it out when it's built, see how drivers are behaving and try to post speed accordingly. Because you're right, it's posted to 40 now. And when you drive that feels like you're going pretty dang fast because of how it is.
Is there gonna be a signal at 22nd?
yes.
And somewhere else.
That's
You took
new,
two
isn't it?
signals.
Others.
Yes.
And a
Yeah,
Pringle-
that's
Yeah. So 25th, 22nd, Pringle, 13th, and 12th. Now, of those 5, 4 are existing.
The only
Okay, what's
new
the
one
new
is
one? Just
22nd.
Just
22nd?
22nd.
Okay.
I don't know.
And Mike,
Oh,
the other part of your question is just, and the reason we all did the heavy sigh over here about speed limits is because it's traditionally been a state-controlled process that doesn't factor in common sense. It factors in a lot of things that make a lot of sense to engineers and people who,
And windshield bias, like,
yeah,
that's where it's coming from.
yeah. And so it's,
My wish for that thing would be that thing, I mean, the guidelines. Because right now it's set on driver behavior alone.
Mhm.
And I would like it to also be set on what it feels like to ride a bike next to a car going by that fast, or walk next to a car that's going by that fast, or live and work with a car that's going by that fast. None of those things are taken into consideration. It's solely based on how people feel in their cars. So for me, that doesn't take into the whole, I don't know, the whole scene, right, in a road. And so that's why I get really frustrated. And I also feel like the very, very little duck up against Goliath, which is ODOT, and you can't really change anything. And it gets me frustrated.
I mean, with the changes in the laws for the radar speed enforcement,
yeah,
there could be an opportunity to put some of that out here.
we'll now have
That'd be
the
great.
ability to do that.
Yeah.
Did
I
you?
mean,
I did.
You have to really try.
Yeah.
You have to really work at it, Mike.
No, you don't.
You have to really work at it to get one of those.
An overachiever.
In Salem?
Yeah. Google commercial. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That can't be right. That can't be right. Then I click the link and, oh yeah, that's right.
The videos are
Same
great.
thing.
But I mean, that's another option.
Council Lonnie,
Mhm, That'd be great.
That works.
did you have one?
Yeah, my question is, how do these travel lanes, et cetera, compare to Fairview Industrial?
Mhm.
Probably, I looked at this. I want to say Fairview Industrial considerably wider. Don't quote me.
Alan, could you be sure and speak up?
Sorry, so I did look at the section on Fairview Industrial, and I thought those were built to like 14.
Well, the reason I ask is I travel that a lot. I work out there. I am comfortable walking along the sidewalk. I don't feel like vehicles buzzing by. And when I drive it, even though the speed limit's 45, not everybody's going 45. It's different.
Yeah, and it has more curves.
It's more curvy.
It does, but it still has long straight stretches and lots of room and, you know, I mean, going 45 doesn't feel uncomfortable. I don't normally go 45, I go 40, but it's just interesting talking about perception, and I just noticed that out on Fairview.
And Fairview is an area, I mean, I've ridden my bike on Fairview 100 times, and it feels very, to me, it's very comfortable.
Okay.
I like riding my bike on Fairview Industrial. It's, yeah, it doesn't feel troubling at all.
Okay, and do you think that's because the road is wider or what?
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't
the
know.
trees, I mean, the trees are
All of
nice.
it, yeah. It doesn't feel like a racetrack,
Okay.
like some of our streets do.
Is there a bike lane there?
Yeah, it's on
Yeah.
street. It's
On
just right.
street, just
Yeah.
separated by paint. But I'm comfortable in the
Yeah.
environment, and I know a lot of people.
If it's 14, we should maybe narrow them up and put in a buffer.
I'll verify that, but that's what I remember, because I had the
Gotta
same
slip
thought,
that in.
how to compare to something close by.
Mhm. And I'm, because I'm kind of looking at this and thinking, yeah, it's gonna be similar to that, but a little different.
But a similar feel, but I think, I don't know about the truck traffic part of it on Fairview Industrial, but yeah, it's a similar environment.
Truck traffic.
Yeah,
They have
yeah.
quite a bit of
Yeah,
truck
I would think
traffic.
so. I've only driven it.
But there is
Go to
industry and
Cosby's
stuff
Deli.
out there,
Mhm,
yeah, for sure.
Go to Cosby's Deli more often and look drive it.
Oh my God, was gonna be out there.
Okay, what else do we have on the go, Chris?
The only other thing I think that we tried to highlight is that we're going into construction and of course, final design on the east and west end, but moving into construction, and if you have any questions, you know, we're here to help.
Okay,
And
Bob, you good? Anything else? Okay.
then we
Cool.
moved into questions for the next, what, 25 minutes?
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah,
I don't know
absolutely.
who this is for, but we're gonna own these corners then?
Yes.
Okay,
So part of it will be used for stormwater facilities.
okay.
She's pointing to the intersection at 22nd, Bob.
We have one more presentation on the project scheduled for the 6th, with the planning commission.
Yes.
Planning Commission, for what purpose? Like, is it a hearing or is it just an update?
More of an update. is what I
Okay.
understood. Yeah, I was asked to come and
Okay,
talk to
You're excited.
thank you.
I get good excited.
Yeah.
Like a lion when they throw in the raw meat, excited. Very excited. Okay, so I lost it. Here we are. And so now we are on to Marine Drive.
Yeah, we have a couple of things we wanted to talk about with Marine Drive.
Okay,
Aaron, you want to take this one or you want me to start with it? Come up and join me. All right. This is Aaron Edelman, everybody. He's one of our engineering project managers. He's taken a major lead in this whole bond program, so he's working on a lot of the work and overseeing a lot of it. The second map here, Marine Drive, there's two things we want to point out. The first one is this box highlighted in, I don't know, I'll call it aqua or marine.
turquoise, green,
Turquoise, yes,
whatever.
is on the market for sale.
Okay.
And you can see the future Marine Drive passes through a chunk of it. That portion was not included in the program we estimated for this bond. So the 2022 bond
It's part of the future.
as part of
plan
the
for Marine Drive,
future,
but not
that's part of the
okay.
future planning
Gotcha.
purposes. However, it is an opportunity. We do have some funding remaining from the 28 bond, and part of it was, you know, purchased right away along Marine Drive, which we've been getting different segments.
And this is all outside the city and mostly outside the UGB. Is that how I'm reading that? Okay.
Exactly.
And pause, how much money do we have left over from the 08?
It's about 300.
300,000.
And the asking price on this is just under $1 million. So there's not a huge gap, but there is a gap. And we thought it was important to share with the committee and kind of get your thoughts on, you know, there is stormwater benefit out here, but again, it is outside the city limits. It's outside their growth boundary. We think there'll be changes in the future with the grant application we submitted for this whole walling area, which
Yeah.
this kind of goes right up against. And if you recall, part of that application, we were considering the field area just to the north of this as a possible recreation site. So it's all It's all right there.
Yep.
It makes sense. This would be a good time. I talked to with our development folks, with it being outside the urban growth boundary, with it being outside the city limits, if a developer purchases it and comes in and tries to develop it, they would go through Polk County, they would not go through us, so we would not have an opportunity to just say, no, don't build a house there. You know, you got to dedicate right away.
Is it buildable?
Most of this is floodplain. I'm not sure about on the west half. I think it is, the zoning is, I forgot what the zoning type was.
How much?
Exclusive farm use.
Yes, exclusive farm use, but I understand there are some special uses that could go in there, like maybe a church could go
Yes,
there.
yes, there are.
There are some things that could go.
Gotcha.
So
But not housing.
not housing like.
Okay. I was thinking in with my housing authority.
Yep.
Brain on like, because we're
That's what I was.
still
thinking
looking for
originally.
property over there.
Right.
So, okay.
Normally, you kind of can see how this is developed here.
Yeah.
Everything to the western Marine Drive is generally high and dry.
Right.
Everything to the east is
Right.
low and wet, so.
Right. I was just thinking like in this little, this little
Right.
area right here near Wallace. Right.
I think, Alan, you connected with, we talked to
I talked to Clint,
Clint about it.
and we talked about
You already have a conversation with the owner about this property.
different parts.
That's a different one.
It's okay,
Further south.
okay.
This
It
one,
was sounding awfully familiar.
yeah, and it's a repeating verse of the same song.
All right, thank
you. This one has a little bit less development potential. Floodplain. So they weren't super enthusiastic about putting affordable housing, especially since it's outside.
Right.
So, what are our options? Our options, we could use a portion of the remaining of 2008 fund that get us a third of the way there. There's probably some stormwater benefit. Maybe we could stretch that a little bit. I haven't talked to Josh yet, and he's probably gonna elbow me inside here, but there was some premium from the
It'll be needed later.
first
For
bond
all the
that will
cost
be needed
overruns.
later.
Brian,
Yes,
we are really good at staging long-term project investments with the federal government funding. Would we consider Marine Drive to be our next big thing and just keep going like we've been doing with the program?
it could be. I mean, I think the remaining cost on that north end was still quite large, if I'm not mistaken. I remember, but 10 million wouldn't strike me as being too low or too high.
Keep at it.
So,
Especially
It
in
could be the
fiber
next
Yeah.
federal ask.
So are you asking us a question?
I thought this has come up and I thought, what a better place to talk about it
Yeah.
with this committee and.
Well, it seems like an opportunity,
Something thought.
especially given our application on this property. It seems like that could as a connector and,
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I mean,
Yeah,
that seems
since
like,
They share that property. line.
yeah, like, I don't know how we say no. I'm sure Josh has 13 reasons to say no, but, or 900,000 reasons to say no. But it just seems like a really important piece of property.
But is there any money in like our system development charges, like for park? I mean, because if we can't build here and we are planning on putting hopefully a park here, and does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
could it be a
there
beach
could
park?
be- could be
Could we
future parks.
use the
Yeah.
300,000
Yeah, I
For
was
this
thinking
part.
stormwater
Right
and-
here,
and park potentially.
and maybe even make some money back by selling this future or developing it or something, keeping the road section? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then-
Can we use that?
We have on occasion
Okay,
been
good,
allowed
then we
to.
must be able.
So we'd have to confirm it here.
Sure.
I think Mildred Lane or there was something where we got approval through the city attorney's office because it was in our plan. It was right on the boundary. And so I know it has been done.
I'm interested in it, but I also don't want to take bond money and put it towards wetland
No.
that nobody's
No,
gonna
no,
use. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's my
No, it might,
uncomfortable part.
yeah, I think if we can do this, we would need to come up with money, not bond.
Okay.
This isn't a bond project in my mind.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
it's
the
a bond
leftover
adjacent.
streets and bridges bond.
Yeah,
Definitely was.
fine.
no, that's very consistent with it. I mean, in my mind.
So where do we still need to buy
Well, there's different-
as far as, that's not on here
Quite a
though.
few places.
No, yeah, it's
Yeah, I feel like
staggered all
That
over.
There's
little
places
bit,
all
all
over
over
the place.
there's still a few others in here,
Further south there.
yeah. This.
We just take it. Yes. Of eminent domain. That's the last resort. We try
I
everything
feel
else
like
first.
we've been trying for a long time.
At some point, we'll have to,
Yeah.
maybe.
From a price perspective, that's actually a decent price compared to what we've been paying.
Yeah, I was shocked at
Too.
the, I was shocked
Yeah.
at the number being so low, honestly.
It's
compared to some of these.
undevelopable, that's probably why, right?
Yeah.
Outside the EGB, exclusive farm use.
Well, yeah, that didn't help us on all the other ones. but-
Okay,
All right, so we had one other thing.
sounds like you have some general
I think we have
direction.
general direction. Yes, thank you. Exactly what we needed.
Bob, did you have anything on that?
I had a couple of quick questions,
Yep.
Mayor. First, if we're still on Marine Drive, is
Yep.
the kind of the dog leg coming off Fifth Street? And I'm wondering what that assumes about continuation of Marine Drive further to the east. That's one question. And then I see Beckett Street Northwest. Is that proposed for improvement as part of this project, or what's the status of Beckett?
Yes, Beckett's proposed for improvement. And as far as the that intersection with North Fifth, we're going to be looking at how we can do something interim to straighten that out. So we haven't started design on it yet. I mean, we have the overall Marine Drive plan, which, you know, turns east there and kind of goes alongside the housing authority in the park. That's none of that funding is included in the project. We didn't want to rule it out from a future option. However, we think we can look at doing something different at the North Fifth to not have it be a right and left turn there like an intersection. So
And I think also his question though is it almost looks like it's anticipating continuing on this way. The way this
is just the master alignment. Stop.
No.
No design, yeah.
yeah, the TSP.
So don't read too much into the drawing, is that what you're saying? Okay.
I mean,
And Mayor, I'm kind of wondering procedurally, how much of this is outside of the urban growth boundary, in which case we have to go to Polk County and get a conditional use permit from them versus what we would do inside the urban growth boundary or city
Yep.
limits?
So see I believe the red line is the urban growth boundary, Bob, so you can see
Right.
there's a little curve there by the housing authority property. There are various little sections of this thing that are, and I think we're talking about an adjustment in on some of those. So we probably wouldn't actually go to Polk County. We would get it in the urban growth boundary at some point. I think that's
Okay.
that's been the
Thank
conversation.
you.
So, yeah, that's been a known issue throughout all of these conversations with this.
What does Beckett look like right now? It doesn't exist. Yeah, that's what I wanted to be clear about.
And again, this is the master plan, 2001, 2000 alignment that was recorded, right? So, you know, I think we recognize that the house just to the south there, that was identified as potentially historic. The city owns that now. That could probably look different. right?
Okay,
Yeah, we have it. This is housing authority property now.
on both sides.
Well, the bond purchased,
Or on that
they're
side.
using.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
It was actually ARPA that purchased it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a combination of. that's-
so the other thing we wanted to talk about was the property just to the south of Harrod Drive. So kind of up on the north end of,
Yeah.
you know, where we're going to be making our connection here. There's a project that's in for land use. This was one of the ones I think Councilor Barney Stapleton had mentioned
Applegate
before.
one.
This is the Applegate.
Oh,
one.
this is where Applegate is?
Right
That's
here?
that's where
Oh,
Applegate's
okay.
proposed.
Cool.
Awesome.
And so there's some challenges on who comes first, how do we get this done? There's an outstanding deferral agreement where the developer of this property has to pay a portion of the Marine Drive. In fact, it's supposed to be the whole portion that goes to this
But it's
property.
affordable housing
But it's affordable housing, but
for
that's,
veterans.
yes.
Uh-huh.
You deliver that message, Brian.
We have delivered a message, but we've really scaled down what that cost would look like, and we tried to bare bones it. The deferral agreements, you know, they get pulled up, they go in front of council. Council has option to say yes.
If that's not
Or no.
considered an SDC,
It's not considered an SDC.
okay.
Yeah.
Because we waived those for portable housing.
Those are way for affordable housing. So we've been working with that developer. Their options were for them to build Marine Drive or to come in off of Wallace through an access through this other portion of the property, which they don't like that idea. Where we've kind of landed is if we get out in front and do this portion of Marine Drive for them and bring forth the deferral agreement, which is a pretty reduced rate, that works better for them than them having to build it on the side. So they are in favor of us getting out in front and doing a chunk of Marine Drive. That would work with their schedule. So that would be different from the overall plan, which is, that's what their schedule. It's out there. It's further out where we come in and we do the whole thing. But we think that may be a good solution for everybody is if.
So just so I'm clear, so we would start here at Harriet and build down essentially to here?
At a minimum, they need to, their new access is about in the middle.
About in the middle,
So
okay.
we're looking at, how far we really have to go. I mean, the farthest we would go would be the property line.
Is this like several hundred feet? Is that what we're talking about, or is this miles?
No, that's just 700.
Okay.
So our proposal would be to move that chunk forward and get started on it so that we can get that in.
Well, that's a really important project to the council. I mean, we've committed other resources. I mean, so it makes sense to make sure it happens to me.
Making you good? I'm just looking at it, thinking.
Yeah.
Makes
Anything
sense.
maybe we can do to get the project going.
Okay.
And
That's
that's
the
one of
direction we're
our
looking for.
targeted groups that we need to get more services for.
Exactly.
There's only 3 of us up here, though. It's fine if you have
I
5.
think Dan told her.
Oh, gotcha.
Sorry.
Never mind.
Is that section of, my question is that section of Marine Drive right there? This is presented as proposed, right?
Right.
Or we're locking ourselves in, right, to where we're placing that portion. But it looks like it kind of has to be in. a
That's
certain
not,
spot.
that's not an open question.
So just to be clear, between the green and where the hatch starts, that exists.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's what I'm saying. I
Right.
can see,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of options which you do this,
No.
but that doesn't.
The only potential variations are really at the south end, as I understand it.
Okay, that's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, we're rocking it today.
and let's see, now we are on, are you done with Marine Drive then?
Anything else to read, Brad? That's it?
Oh, Bob, yeah.
Oh, one last question, if I can. I noticed that the cross section for Marine Drive is 28 feet. Is that right? 2 14-foot lanes. Is that right? Or are we still thinking about that?
That's the cross section with then a 12-foot multi-use path on the east and a 5-foot sidewalk on the west.
So that 14 does not show the shy distance like you just saw on the Gilcrest. So if you,
So they're 12-foot wide.
Yeah.
And no center turn lane.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because I assume that we're talking, a lot less truck traffic, if any, on Marine Drive. So I'm wondering if there's potential to narrow the right of way up a little bit there, given it's probably mostly auto traffic.
Maybe a foot. I mean, then it would be the same as McGilchrist, but there's with no center turn lane, then you're squeezed. So I mean, right now I would stick with what we have, but if, if the community wanted something a little bit narrower, I don't know that from each side would build a project you tell me. I mean,
Okay, so that's something that as we get closer to design,
as we
we can
start
hash
looking for
those
design,
things out.
we can-
Okay,
Yeah.
and everybody's familiar with the multi-use path that already exists, and this will just be connecting it up to the park, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this one is 12 feet wide, so it's a little bit wider than say the cycle track on the Gilchrist in our typical. I think the 12 is better.
In our design standards, what's the difference between a multi-use path and a cycle track? Because I'm getting that question a lot. Well, isn't this just a multi-use path?
I think the difference is going to be the texture of the concrete. I had heard at one point, is that still the case?
And they're separated. The bikes are separated from the pedestrians. That's the key difference.
Well, only,
Multi-use path. it's
Only with
every-
paint, right?
only with paint.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
not
still
only,
separate.
Still
but-
separate.
Yes. Okay. It's good to know, so I can tell people.
Minto is a multi-use path.
Yes.
Yes.
Some slalom down 3 people.
Oh, you're the one.
I'm going
On
10
your
miles an
e-bike,
hour.
on your e-bike, that's the
My
complaints I
e-bike
keep
when I'm
getting.
going 40 miles an
E-bikes
hour.
in Minto Brown. That's you. Now I see. Okay. Are you good, Bob?
My belt.
Okay.
There you go.
Union Street Bikeway.
Okay, these next few, I think we can blast through pretty quick because there's one more.
Are we scheduled till 1:30?
1:30.
Oh, good, we're good. Okay. I was worried we were.
So I think with Union Street, the major news is, aside from the construction on the current phase that's ongoing that you may have seen.
Is there a handout
Yeah.
that we're supposed to be
There's
looking
no
at?
handout, sorry.
Okay.
What? Messing with my head.
Sorry.
Just verbal on this one. We selected a consultant to do the design on the eastern portion from Summer. Eastern and western. Eastern and western, yeah, right. So Summer to connect to 12th Street and then the one block section between Union Street Bridge.
You selected a consultant.
Yeah, over HHBR.
It's the same firm.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
Is this the family friendly?
Yes.
Signed the contract for that today.
What's going on now? On Union,
Lots of construction, homes everywhere. Everybody's very excited.
I think it's ADA upgrade and ramps, but I wondered if any.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on Union
On
Street right
Union
now?
Street?
No, that's the middle piece of this.
But she,
Perfect.
Yeah, it's the buffered bike lanes, ADA ramps.
All the things.
Yeah, all the things.
Everything protected bike lane gets you except
New
a
pavement.
barrier.
But only the middle section, not the two ends.
So only the middle section.
commercial.
Right.
Commercial to center. Gotcha.
With that key intersection being fixed at Liberty,
That's the killer.
dear God,
Literally.
literally killer.
Yes.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah.
What's the construction projection for the two end pieces? Less than 26. So we'll get the middle will wrap up and then we'll short gap and then pick up. the pieces.
And when will we get their, well, how does this work? We signed a contract for them to come up with a design. When do we get to have input on the design?
I mean, I think we'll treat it probably the same way we've treated some of these other big projects and bring you updates during the design and show you where it's headed, just like we did here for Chris. And that would probably be, we'll have a little ways next year.
We're still in the hiring process.
So it's at this committee level, not at like the public outreach level. I think that was kind of.
Oh, that'd be public outreach.
Yeah,
as well.
We do both.
Okay.
And then, the original plan for this was to basically, from what I remember, is to kind of cut down a bunch of trees and put in a big multi-use path or a cycle track type path through there.
The original plan has always been to basically kind of take the extra wide asphalt that's out there and stripe in a bike lane and a buffer for both directions of traffic.
And then as you come around the curve on 12th, it peels off between the trees and comes over beside the sidewalk.
It was never to cut down all the trees.
That's great. I hear a lot about those trees.
Yeah.
So you're taking that,
Tree circle.
yeah, taking that extra lane. So there's 2 lanes going through there.
Yes.
So we're thinking about taking one of those lanes. That's fantastic news. Now, there is one block where it doesn't have 2 lanes, but that has parking. Are we able to take the parking?
Some of the parking is going to get removed and there's some parking pockets that are part of the
Okay.
project that will be going there.
Good. And don't we have a rule somewhere right now in our text that says if we take away parking, we have to replace it elsewhere?
We did a study to make sure that there was enough parking within the adjacent areas.
Okay,
So we did not have any quote unquote net loss of any parking.
good, because I didn't know if we needed to do something at council to get rid of that rule so that we could have more flexibility as far as removing the parking.
No parking requirements anywhere.
Anyway, that's great. Okay, those are all my questions.
Great. Anything else on Union Street? Okay, pavement R&R Center Street.
Yeah. So this is it's not good news.
Oh.
Just following up from previous item, but go ahead. If it's bad news, go for it.
Go for it.
So we,
Wait,
I had mentioned that
disappointed.
there was utility issues that are out there, and there are multiple utilities. So we're working on looking at what it's gonna take and how we're gonna adjust it. Yeah, make sure those are taken care of. There's stormwater out there, groundwater. So it's all, it's the trifecta.
So
Is
this is a
there gonna
So
be
the-
a sinkhole? That's what we want to
So
know.
this was a follow-up to your question of why it was where it was.
Why it was so late in the schedule. And the answer is because it's really complicated. And in the meantime,
Some repairs have been made.
some repairs have been made, which makes four-wheel drive no longer required, which is much appreciated. So it's definitely an improvement, but it's gonna be years until it's fixed. Okay.
Most of Capitol.
That goes north, I believe. I live east. So, thank you for the update. That's good to know. Disappointing. Good to know. Bridge rehab. I saw some letters recently on those.
Right, that's the update is that, those that don't know, we have 4 bridges that we're removing load restrictions from with this project. And so that design work is getting underway. And we just sent out notices to folks that they might see survey activity. Sure you're all aware of that.
Okay. Parks, sports courts.
Sports courts, yes.
Does that mean a noisy pickleball or not noisy
Yes, that's
pickleball?
exactly what I just said. Again, this one is just a.
No, I love pickleball, but there are people who really get upset about pickleball because it's so loud, and I'm gonna use air quotes on loud. Yeah,
And it's so much fun. Right? People start hooting and hollering.
Don't want people having fun.
no fun in
No
our
fun,
parks.
zero.
That's not allowed.
Main thing there is we just selected a consultant. We're negotiating a final contract, and that's the only reason I wanted to bring it up is I think there's some work to do with the Parks Department and the communities or the neighborhoods about what those courts want to be, if they need to be resurfaced exactly the way they are, if there's different, whether it's pickleball or futsal or whatever the case may be.
So we're looking at converting eventually some like tennis courts or different things.
Yeah, possibly. We're trying to, accommodate as many uses.
Right.
Or they have the ball courts and the tennis courts
Yeah.
together in one, yeah.
We're very excited about this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. McKay School Park.
This one is just, again, a teaser for future. So at McKay School Park, we have a shelter, new restrooms, and then field rehab out there.
So the porta potties got burned down. Yes, burned up on
Good
Wednesday.
hustle then.
So we might need
Might be
to
that.
hurry up on the
Sorry.
project.
And similar to what Rick was sharing about Center Street, we've been looking at all the parks projects to see if there's utility issues. And not so much an issue here, but maybe an opportunity. There's a key drainage facility that goes through that area. And we're working on stormwater master planning for that creek basin right now. And so in June, I think we'll get an idea of whether there's some opportunity for to make sure we don't miss a chance to do some stormwater improvements while we're at it.
So I don't know if you're aware of the conversations that we have the city along with parks and the school district that we're having. They're quite animated about a park and have interest in those fields.
Yeah,
So just so you're aware that.
yeah, for sure. I know there's a lot of coordination.
Yeah,
we need to undertake.
right.
What in
The superintendent and the city manager and I were out traipsing around in the cave pool park a couple of weeks ago. Months, has it been months?
It was so cold that day.
It was super cold. I remember that.
Budget season has been hard.
Yeah. It was sometime before today.
It could have been April.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway,
I
so
didn't know
there's,
that there was a body of water out there.
oh yeah, a creek goes right through there.
I think it drains to the footing eventually.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's part of that.
Very cool.
Part of that system.
It's a-
Nice.
The other fun thing about McKay School Park is on the east entrance is the county, the west entrance is in the city. Yeah. And then the school district has their eyes on it, so it's got a lot of potential.
A lot of people who want to invest in it, huh?
So list of selected consultants.
Okay, now we're to the next handout.
Next handout.
This is, that one right there with the, thank you, Sam. on top.
Got it.
So this is really just kind of a beta version. We had questions, we've had questions, I think, over a couple meetings about who are we hiring and,
Yes.
and kind of local vendor spending.
Yep.
And really this we haven't gone very far yet, but I wanted to share this format with you all to see if it kind of made sense. And then we can just bring this back on a quarterly basis or something like that. So you can see projects as they get consultants and contractors hired, who they are, where they're from, and how that how those contract amounts stack up. So this is really everything that we've done today, and it's all been consultant hiring, no contractors yet. And it shows you who those firms are. And it's been a little bit, I think, most invoices. So.
Okay.
So I just wanted to share this with you all, see if it kind of meets those needs in terms of reporting who's doing what for what projects. There's a summary on the back.
Can we get a pie chart with the summary?
Could absolutely do it.
That'd be great. I like pie chart.
This is great.
I have a question on, this is good. In terms of, once we get to, we're actually putting projects up to bid, what is the outreach plan for local contracting community? Think of like, Latino Business Alliance breakfast 2 weeks ago, and there's a lot of contractors there. So what's the city's plan for outreach to the local contractors? Is it open houses on an annual basis? Like, here's the project timeline for this year on bond projects, et cetera. What's sort of the thinking there?
Yeah, we've worked a lot through Capital Connections in the past and talked about projects there, but I think we could absolutely take that show on the road to other places as well. Latino Business Alliance, we've worked with the chamber in the past on projects to try to, especially for big projects where there's subcontractor opportunities. I think
we'd be I think the chamber would be more than happy to facilitate, and LBA as well, facilitate that type of outreach.
With our, so we have the police facility, the library, seismic retrofit, and other public works building. And in some of those projects, we actually had like pre-bid conferences and stuff where we really were mentoring and helping some of the smaller businesses and the minority and women-owned businesses, helping them be better prepared to respond. And that was hosted at the chamber, and those kinds of things I think would be great going forward. So, yeah.
And most of those opportunities will really, well, I mean, the first few will start next year outside of Minto. That's kind of the for this year. So I think we can hear that in 24 for sure. And then go from there. It starts to get busier.
Anything else on that?
That's it, unless there's questions or
Okay.
comments besides pie chart.
I was just gonna add one thing with, so most of what you see here is professional fees. So these are engineering, surveying services. ORS requires that those are quality-based selection. So we can't just say we're gonna go to a local firm and pick them. We've got to go through qualifications and then we select. Once we get to contracting, which is where the big money is, then it's generally low bid. So I think what we've seen in the past bonds is the contract, we have a lot of great, excellent contractors locally, and they perform very well and bid very well. So a lot of the dollars get spent, and you'll see the percentages local go up with the actual contracts that get awarded. Professional fees is kind of a mixed bag. So we have some really good local firms that do a lot of our smaller size projects, but then when we get some of these big ones, generally it's from out of Portland or they have more resources they can put on it. So just wanted to share that qualification-based selection on the design side and that low bid on the construction side.
Yeah. So thanks, Alan, for this. I think bringing this back quarterly would be great.
And the other thing that we will start doing too, especially as expenditures start to ramp up, is bring overall bond cash flow and forecast. So we like to send those functions back.
Yeah, great.
We can do all that together.
Pavement R&R, not including Center Street.
Not including.
Not that I'm bitter, because I'm not.
So this is a follow on from all the maps that we passed out last month. And I think as we fielded some questions about it over this time, and we've looked at it a little bit more, and next month, Julie's gonna come back and follow up on our discussions about the transportation bucket projects, sidewalk infills and replacements. And the other criteria that'll go along with equity. And the more we thought about it, the more we thought really the places we need to focus here outside of that discussion are probably the 2024 pavement R&R. So that's the commercial street segment here, and then the small Liberty Street segment, and then Silverton Road in 2025. It's a big piece of a
Are
project.
these red numbers, we're seeing new estimates because they all are going in the right direction. if they are.
Yes. So one of the questions we got is what's up with the pricing? And the way these were originally presented was as a standalone one-off project, if you just were going out and building this one little piece by itself. And the question got asked, well, what if we did it as part of the project? It wouldn't cost that much, but that's correct. And so what you're seeing here is about a 20% reduction in most cases for these, if they got packaged with the R&R project itself. If instead we held off on them and said, no, we're going to do them with the rest of the infill and replacement and head crossing projects as kind of packages that are spread out around this region, then you're probably gonna see higher prices than this, but not all the way as high, probably somewhere between like an 8 or 10% reduction off that original number.
Well, I think we want to do whatever we can to maximize the bond dollars.
Yeah, so that's why really for these first two projects, it does make sense, I think, to consider these. There's a few that we go through in a minute. There's a few nuances with some of them. The other thing the other question we got that I think came from Bob was, man, this looks like a lot of money for a short segment of sidewalk.
Yeah.
And what's going on with that. And I know he did some research on the ODOT website about what it looks like they're paying for sidewalk. And so, Aaron, you can help me with the figures here because I'm going off the top of my head. But we looked at the ODOT numbers, and of course they're bidding in large quantities in some cases and small quantities in some cases, and they're publishing all those results. So they're ranging anywhere from like 10 to 30 bucks a square foot that they were seeing in contracts in 2020. And the numbers we're using here for concrete sidewalks on a square foot are around 21 or 20.
Yes.
And so, go ahead.
And for a little additional context, we just bid and opened the Lancaster Watson pedestrian crossing. The low bid price for the sidewalk there was $41 a square foot. And so
How come so much different?
it's all about the economy of
Small
scale.
quantity.
Oh, okay.
You know, the smaller the project, the higher the cost, the bigger the project.
And then, because this is just a one-off that we're doing out there, so, okay.
So, and again, another argument to whether it's with this project or with light work, the more we can package it, the better off we'll be. And then the other thing to keep in mind when sort of comparing those numbers is, so ODOT's publishing their concrete bid price. These numbers include everything else that goes along with it, right? So the traffic control, the right of way if it's needed, design costs, erosion control, stormwater, all those things. And so that's, even though it's kind of the same as with Gilchrist, right? You go, gosh, how does it get to be so much? Well, if you're just doing all those little things in one place at a bad economy of scale, it gets to a pretty big number fast.
Gotcha. Bob, did you have something?
Well, just a couple of thoughts. I think I appreciate most of those things, or appreciate them better than I did. I think my thought is we want to, stretch the dollars as far as we can. We have very few resources and lots of needs in terms of sidewalks. So I'm just hoping we can be as creative as possible in coming up with solutions. I like the idea of, bundling for economies of scale. So I hope that's something that we will look at. My other thought is I'm curious to see what Julie comes back with next month so that we can, weigh the apples and oranges of doing additional projects as part of the pavement R&R against what are the other needs that we see in the community for making sidewalk improvements.
Yeah, and that's why I think it really makes sense to focus on these segments for right now, and then let that conversation continue a little bit, and then look at the next projects that are coming down the line and kind of see how our processes are paralleling each other, and if it makes sense to just let everything else be part of the rating process, or consider the next one as its own thing like we're doing. sounds right to everybody.
Okay.
So we can kind of walk through these, and I think what we're at here is we've kind of looked at it and have a recommendation. And just want to kind of see how you all feel about it. So we can start with the 2024 payment R&R on commercial. And there's just a handful of opportunities here. And I think the one that maybe we want to talk about is Wiltsey, because as we talked about before, that intersection project there at Wiltsey and Commercial is where that transit project could be.
Yeah.
And so it actually might make sense for us to just hold off on this and what's happening with that project. Because there's going to be a lot.
Specifically on the Wiltsey Road sidewalk infill, is that what you're talking about? Okay,
It would take heavy coordination. Whatever's occurring.
gotcha. And so it's such a small project, it doesn't seem like the downside, like if that somehow didn't pan out, the downside is only $40,000. Right. So,
And I think when that project develops, or when that property develops, it'll be required.
right.
Question.
So yeah, to me, it's worth the risk of holding off, but just my approach, I mean, we might save 180,000.
So I guess just to be clear, there's two tax lots there. There's the bigger portion and then this, the majority of this line is in front of a tiny tax lot. It's the same owners, but if you look at what Cherry's produced as their master planning.
Yeah.
They're not touching that little parcel. I don't know if that will change.
Well, I don't know the details, but I think that, you know, the hope is that one of our other bond projects would come in terms of the affordable housing branch library could potentially come in to that project, and that might be where that actually comes to play. So we might actually, I mean, it's all just.
It seems like, again, it's worth just kind of letting that
Yeah,
play out.
Yeah.
And then we can always put it back in the rating process and come get it later.
Yeah.
Turns out that it doesn't.
that makes sense to me. How are others thinking? You good with that?
I agree with that. Sorry, I don't want to talk. I'm looking at Nikki. I feel like I'm talking
I'm
about.
just, no, that's okay. I'm processing it. No, I think it's a good idea since things are still a little up in the air.
Okay,
My question on I agree with that on the sidewalk. My question is on the head crossing. Is this a location that the local folks who live in this area have requested a crossing at this point?
the one on the
Yeah.
wall you're talking about?
So
Great.
this was one of the higher scoring ones out of the old criteria. Summer three.
Okay. Anything else on 2024 pavement R&R? On commercial, I mean specifically, sorry. Okay,
The next sheet is just this block here on Liberty between Trade and Mill, so just north of City Hall. And there's a couple of sidewalks there that could use repair, so it seems like it makes sense again to grab those while we're there.
so we're doing pavement R&R in the red?
Yeah.
Okay,
We're gonna get a big one. So people don't use it as a turning lane.
oh, that would be
Yes.
awesome.
I rode this just the other day. So what, I guess, can you walk me through, because I know that there's different types of issues with sidewalks, right? Like we have the root issue, which there's one of those on this here, kind of midsection. But then this larger, wider section, that kind of seems like the only thing, it's like flaking apart.
Correct.
So can you tell me the difference, like what kind of repair, like what's happening there that it needs a repair?
So this is actually on the bridge.
Okay, okay.
And that's, I think what we would do to repair that is just a real thin. Because the sidewalk is actually a part of the bridge.
Okay.
So it's a pretty unique, and that's why it has a big price tag. And then the driveway just adjacent to it, there's kind of like a roller coaster coming off of it into the driveway. It's pretty broken up for fire trucks as well.
Yeah. So is there any money in the fire truck maintenance bucket?
Do we have one of those?
I don't know. That's
Josh?
like if fire trucks are, causing some of this problem, then maybe they can help pitch in. Yeah, yeah.
It'd be general fund.
It would, yeah.
Yeah.
Keith, don't look at me.
So I
He's got
where-
money.
Where does the money go from the sale of fire trucks? It just goes into vehicle purchases?
So they, it goes into the equipment replacement reserve for future vehicle purchases, not for fire trucks, but for other
other vehicle needs
Or
for that
for-
specific department.
Or also for damage caused by the vehicle?
Not historically, no.
Well, I mean, you know.
Yeah, me and you, we're on this together. Okay.
And yes, up here, there's, as you can see, large trees. So the
Yes,
root
very-
uplift.
yeah.
And we show it all because by the time you fix one,
Yep.
essentially.
Anything else on that? Okay,
Okay.
2025, Sage and R North.
Complicated one for last.
Yeah, this was not
Yeah, that was
clear what's going on here.
Yeah, so, and I think where we, and Aaron can fill in the details, but we kind of talked about this last time too, was there's a lot here and you could use up a good chunk of the funding just on this project. And so I think what we try to do is streamline it down to getting good connection all the way from top to bottom on one side. And then kind of what made sense to attach that. So I don't know if you want to walk through that.
Yeah, so I guess on the top, you kind of see the two orange infill pieces. So them sit back a little bit from Silver Circle. So
Hold on, so we're talking about Beacon and 30th? Okay,
Correct. So the thought there was to remove them from the bigger project because they do sit back. Close in proximity, kind of like the Wiltsey one was. And then we focused really on the northern side, try to provide that connection, and that's essentially what X all the stuff on the right hand side on.
Virginia's already adding up the numbers to see what she can buy.
Stop it.
She's literally got a calculator out.
Keep talking.
And you'll notice on the lower right, the 17th, the beach south, we included that. The thought there was, we're adding the ped crossing. We talked with Chariots a little bit, realized they want to put a stop there on the other side. It kind of all ties together with the ped movements.
So you're talking about right here, so adding this.
Correct.
Okay.
It's confusing. If you can see the arrow pointing to the black line encompasses two tiny green.
Oh, okay, so you're just referring to those two greens.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Can you tell me why some of these are orange?
Orange was the infill.
Oh, okay, got it. And then the replacement.
Green was
Got it.
replacement.
Blue is safer pedestrian crossing.
Yep.
So like right
All
here.
right, right, right.
And again-
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
I wanted to ask for a little bit more detail on the projects on the south side, the beach, west of Beach and 17th and the crossing there. I'm just wondering what the pedestrian generators are in that area. I mean, when I think of that area, I think of, we have the intersection at 17th and Lana. Do we have a lot of pedestrian activity along that south side and crossing the street?
So I think the big generator is the Marion Health.
yeah, there's a health department facility on the north side there.
Okay,
It's their major campus now off of Center Street campus. So there's a lot of traffic in and out of there, but go ahead.
do we have a transit stop at that location across the street?
There's currently one in front of the facility on the north side. They would like to put one on the south side.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
What was the process for determining that it's the north side we're gonna do as opposed to the south side?
It wasn't super scientific, mainly because it was the Uber side on.
And it's the easier side, and I think it provides pretty good connection.
Yeah, because we basically said, hey, maybe look at picking one side, figure out how to maximize the dollars, and because otherwise this is a big project.
And
Price wise.
There's a ped crossing, there's one ped crossing here, then we've got another crossing project that's funded outside of the bond at Sedona, right? So
Yeah.
we'll provide a couple.
So we're doing the north side. So what about this east of Williams, which is it's crossed off as well? Sorry, the 300,000?
Right here.
Yeah, am I seeing that correctly?
Yeah.
So that one should
That would
should still be in the game.
catch.
But then the 17th to Beach on the south side should be taken off?
I
Or
think
not?
it's a discussion. I mean, we included it
Okay.
because of the ped crossing.
Okay,
Because the bus
Sorry, I was
Sherry.
calculating and you guys were talking,
Yeah,
and
I
my
guess
brain was trying to
Sherry
figure
just wants
out
$300,000
what the heck
raise.
was happening.
Sherry just wants to add a stop over there
That's
for the
great.
health department.
So part of the additional context, I guess, would be is there's a PD funded project that rebuilds 7 to 12, right? So this will all be upgraded.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm, because it's coming out of the other funds.
What?
The urban renewal area, because they're adding a turn lane there.
That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
So yeah, could we do that sidewalk replacement with those, or no, it's probably outside?
Outside.
Sorry, yes,
I think
you are a,
those are within the line is somewhere.
Yeah, it's not very far from here. Is it?
Oh.
Somewhere there.
maybe they could do all of these then.
But it is on
But-
one side of Silverton Road, not on the fairground side. So I don't know
Oh,
how, it kind of gerrymanders around the fairground.
Can we get that line
Could.
put on this map?
Yep.
For our next meeting? maybe?
yeah, that would be helpful just to kind of see how that plays in.
And
We
then
can
tell
check for
Kristen.
funding available.
Yeah, and see what kind of funding there is in
Yeah.
that. That's Northgate. Is that?
It sounded like the direction there is see if there's, we want it in the project, but see if there's maybe a way to get it elsewise.
But I like the idea of adding that. If Chariots is gonna put a bus stop
Mhm.
on the south side, I like that. 17th to Beach South included, those two.
If you can picture that area, it's, there's the parking for the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
There's really like hardly any curb. I mean,
Right.
it's like almost,
Changes.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
It's a mess.
pretty rough.
Yeah, no, this is, and the more the fairgrounds gets used year round, and I know that that's hit and miss, but there are, like, just this weekend, this last couple of weekends, there have been huge conventions and stuff out there where they're using multiple sections of it, and I know there's been parking over here, and so I do think it's good to have that upgraded, so.
and this area is used a lot because
Yeah.
of the, we'll name it, pottery place. That's
Right.
open all the time.
Right.
I am not seeing the Sedona, is that it? This one that we've got, the
Sedona, yeah.
infill. I'm not remembering, I drive this all the time. I'm not
It's a huge
remembering.
oak tree.
And across the street is that other oak tree that's down from the ice storm that
It's
nobody's
back a
cleaned
little
up.
bit, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Sedona one,
I'll have
there's
to
just
drive somewhere.
one parcel, there's an oak tree, just like right to the curb.
So I know that we have about 3 minutes left in this meeting, so I want to, anything else on this conversation? Because I know we have just one more quick thing to discuss.
I think we've heard what we need.
Okay, great. So we're on to meeting schedule.
Yeah, so you guys have one more scheduled meeting and it's kind of set, next month, it is on the 29th. I just want to check with you guys, if you're selecting this cadence and this time and afternoon, do we want to continue to do monthly, do you think?
What are your thoughts, Bob? Do you have thoughts? Bob's a thumbs up.
Thumbs up? all
I'm
around?
seeing all
So far, it's
thumbs up.
working well.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I
it's,
think it's
so I think
good.
we're in a good cadence, good time.
Would you like me to schedule to them to the calendar year?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Will do.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. This was really helpful. I think it's good stuff.
Thank you.